before we go to socialism, Sharon, you can specifically refer to the case of
Chile.
yeah,
Okay.
Chile. Chile.
So I just posted my paper, but I also printed it out.
Thank you.
Okay, so in this paper, I guess we're looking at Chile and how essentially Chile had an early peak in the commercialized opening of their ports and for trade. So when we look at Chile, it's important to study liberalism when Latin American countries began opening their economic doors, looking to the West for development, because currently the region is again opening their markets for foreign investment. And in Chile, I guess traditionally there's an understanding that economic liberalization began in the 1830s, but I guess a lot of evidence has come out recently that in the first 2 decades of the 19th century, Chile actually began expanding external trade. So that's what this article is looking at. And I put essentially the bolded or the main points in the paper. So the early peak of Chilean external trade, I guess in the 1810s was the first cycle of expansion. There was a lot of exports and imports from the British and French. There was a lot of textiles coming in and raw materials for manufactured production, and primarily the exports were copper, silver, and agricultural products. Then there's a second phase in 1880, and that's when nitrate and iodine also became primary exports. There was external and internal influences which sort of dictated Chile's early entrance into this external trade.
Influences, you mean factors, conditions?
Yeah, external and internal factors.
Mm-hmm.
So worldwide, I guess, specifically in North Europe, there was a demand for Latin American products and raw materials, which reflected growing population, urbanization, and industrialization. So they sought to supplement what they were producing domestically with these international products, and that had specifically that was silver, copper. I don't have to read them out. And according to the article, the British and the North Americans first came to Chile in the 18th century looking for gold, silver, copper, and hunting seals. And that's when Valparaiso first became an important port and then developed into a hub. The reading talks about the importance of Valparaiso. I guess during this time, there was a lot of conflicts and civil wars in many of the other countries in Latin America. So that further set up Valparaiso to be a commercial zone in South America. Also, modernization of transportation that has to do with like ships, steamboats, railroads. That all facilitated the export of agricultural products to Europe, and then other technologies like the telegraph and the modernization of the postal service. Also, the arrival of foreign merchants. They were attracted to Latin America through books, stories about wealth and the potential for development. I guess exploiting this continent and also Chile specifically. So the British would set up certain relationships with new states. They would send consuls, and I guess an interesting thing was that many merchants came, but they established trading companies and firms, which essentially changed the nature and the character of the port from a small port to like a huge hub. There was also direct foreign investment and mining operations, and then international subsidiaries of major international banks began to develop in the country. The internal factors, specifically with Chile, have to do with natural resources, them having these specific natural resources, and then institutional factors such as the political stability of the Chilean government, In the aftermath of Spanish rule, many states had political crises, conflict, and social and racial divisions, which made it difficult then to translate into economic growth and stability. So Chile specifically had this advantage, and the reading also talked about having this authoritarian Republican regime which maintained that political order. The economic policies of Chilean government, they really encouraged investment. They had a free trade regulation of 1821, which declared Valparaiso a hub, and they offered certain rights to foreign ships, such as storage of imported goods. They sort of manipulated custom duties and decreased them for foreigners coming in. The reading talks a lot about the role of the government in at different points, increasing and decreasing customs as a means of revenue. The government also invested in the construction of railroads and institutionalization of the financial system. There were also incentives for immigration. Because foreign merchants were sort of privy to the European markets, the government felt they would be capable of leading Chilean economy to the international market.
May I ask? You know, there are in the book of Kirby, you can see there are a discussion. There are two perspectives about the development of Latin America in relation to the liberal experiences in the 19th century. The more negative point of view that liberalism was a cause for many problems right now. But the other vision is more positive, liberalism as the best formula or the best key to generate conditions to have prosperity and better development. This discussion is the same discussion.
It's going on.
Yeah, exactly, and between protectionism and liberalism, a very old discussion. After to read this text with these arguments, what is your conclusion?
Well, I guess in the end of the article, after all of this, Chile, opening their ports in terms of external trade and commercialization, you said that why is it that Chile didn't become a developed country rather than it's developing? And I think that speaks to your question, because I guess while they were importing and exporting these primary goods, they still didn't have the technological advances to compete with the West. And at the same time, when you talk about this opening up the borders and free trade, you see that I guess Latin America was still at the whim of the European market, the international markets. So I want to say that although Chile benefited in terms of they opened their ports, they received, I guess, a lot of these European influences, they still remained underdeveloped in a sense. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that. Let's see.
Maybe there were necessary another conditions. For example, in the case of Japan, Japan was a country without nothing practice. At the beginning of the 19th century, they had only agriculture, they had many problems.